There are some stories that seem to grow in the dark, fed by panic, isolation, and fear. Most of them vanish by morning, but some leave evidence. Tracks, broken car mirrors, scratches, and questions that even the local police can't answer. Welcome to Want to Hear Something Spooky. Tonight we'll be talking about things that just shouldn't exist, but they keep popping up somehow. Our first story takes us back to 1903 to a sleepy little town in Iowa called Van Meter. The town was populated by salt-of-the-earth people, a banker, shop owners, a high school teacher. They all reported bizarre encounters with some sort of antediluvian creature with a single blunt horn coming out of its head that emitted a blinding white light. The town was officially incorporated in 1877, and by 1903 it had a population of about 1,000 people. There was a decommissioned coal mine at the edge of town, and on the property where the coal mine sat, there was a tile and brick factory that employed most of the men in the town. The first to witness the phenomenon was Eugene Griffith. He was a man in his 30s. He ran an implement and seed store alongside his brother. He served on the village council and was a member of the Freemasons and the Modern Woodmen, and was generally considered an integral part of the community. On Tuesday, September 29th, he was on his way home when he saw an unfamiliar light on the top of the Mather and Gregg building. He searched his memory for what he thought it could be. At first, he landed on burglars, but then he quickly dismissed that idea when the light shot across the street to the building across the way and then vanished. The next night, Wednesday, again at around 1 a.m., the local doctor, Alcott, was awoken by a bright light shining in his window. He reached for the gun that he kept ready at his bedside, and when he looked out his window, he saw something that was half human, half animal, with great bat-like wings. It had one blunt horn on the middle of its forehead that was emitting a blinding white light. He took 5 shots at it, but none of them hit their target. On Thursday, October 1st, Clarence Peter Dunn, the cashier at the local bank, had his own sighting. Dunn was an active member of the community and held many civic positions, from mayor to treasurer to the head of the school board. After hearing about the other encounters, he was also worried about burglars, so he stayed overnight at the bank to prevent any robberies. At around 1 a.m., and I'm noticing a pattern here, are you? He heard a sound that he described as someone strangling, and he also saw the blinding white light. He looked through the window and saw the creature standing outside, and in his panic, he fired through the glass, but he did not hit the creature. At dawn, he found 3-toed footprints outside in the dirt. That night, Otto White, co-owner of Fisher & White hardware store, was asleep in his room above the store when he was awoken by a sound. He grabbed his gun and ran to his window, where he saw the creature sitting on top of a telephone pole. He took deliberate aim, and despite being ordinarily a good shot, he did not hit the creature. All he managed to do was draw its attention. It turned to look at him, and he recalled smelling a powerful odor filling the room, and it seems that he experienced a type of time loss because he didn't remember anything else until the morning. The shot that White fired woke his neighbor, Sidney Gregg, who rushed outside to see what the commotion was. He made it in time to see the creature climbing down from the pole using its huge beak the way that a parrot would. Once it hit the ground, he estimated that it stood at about 8 feet tall. It flapped its massive wings once and then ran off, taking giant leaps until it eventually lifted off into the air, flying towards the coal mine. On Friday, October 2nd, workers in the tile and brick factory that was located about 660 feet from the mine shaft reported hearing strange noises. They said it was as if Satan and a regiment of imps were coming forth to do battle. On Saturday, October 3rd, manager of the tile and brick factory, J.L. Pratt, and other workers heard noises coming from the mine, and then they saw the creature come up from the mine along with a smaller version of it. Both of them had the bright white light shining from their foreheads. Word spread quickly through town, and men began gathering at the mine entrance with guns. As dawn approached, the creatures returned, and the men took aim, unloading a deafening attack. The creatures added to the cacophony with their own screeches. After the last shots were fired, the creatures crawled back into the mine unharmed. A group of men were sent to barricade the mine, but how, or even if they did so, is unknown. The only report that exists of the incident is through a letter that was written by a Van Meter resident, H. Phillips, that was sent into the Des Moines Daily News. The letter ended at the point where the townspeople had decided to barricade the mine, and there were no other further reports. There were only opinion pieces from local residents that were skeptical of the report. While there have been sporadic sightings through the years, there have been no other major incidents like the one in 1903. Most skeptics write the whole thing off as either a complete fabrication by the letter writer or a case of mass hysteria. Whatever the case, it is an interesting footnote in the history of a small Midwestern town. These days, there is an annual festival held in honor of the Van Meter visitor in September. The tradition started in 2013, 110 years after the original incident. Our next story begins on an unseasonably warm spring night in late April of 1973 in Enfield, Illinois. Young Greg Garrett was playing in his backyard at around 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, and he was catching fireflies. As a former feral kid myself, who was born in Chicago but raised in Mississippi, I have very fond memories of that exact scenario. Well, mostly, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Greg's parents were inside watching TV when he came tearing into the house, claiming that he had just seen a three-legged monster run through their backyard. He offered his shredded shoes as proof, claiming that the monster ran across his feet and shredded his shoes with its clawed feet. At the neighboring McDaniels household, the kids there said that they heard something scratching at the door, as well as a window unit air conditioner, claiming that it sounded as if something was trying to get in. Their father, Henry McDaniel, went to the door and slowly opened it and found the creature standing on their front doorstep and then slammed it in its face. He opened the door and fired several shots at it, claiming it hit at least once, but it just shrugged it off. He said that it hissed at him like a wild cat and then leapt away, covering 75 feet in 3 leaps. He called the police, and the state troopers that responded to the call did not find the animal, but they did find several scratches in the siding of the house and some strange tracks. The tracks were shaped similar to a dog's paw, but it had 6 toe pads. The next night, McDaniels awoke to the sound of the neighborhood dogs howling. He got up and went outside in enough time to see the creature slowly moving down the nearby railroad trestle. He contacted the local media the next day to report what he had seen. He described the creature as being about 4.5 feet tall, with 3 long legs tipped with sharp claws, a stocky body with stubby little arms, grayish sickly skin, and huge pink eyes that were about the size of flashlights. That description set off a media frenzy, and madness descended on the neighborhood. Outsiders flooded the neighborhood looking to either catch a glimpse of the thing or to take it home as a trophy kill. The sheriff's department got one call after another reporting these monster hunters disturbing the neighborhood. At least 5 people were arrested for disturbing public safety by firing at something that they believed was the creature. Rick Rainbow, which is arguably a cool name, was the news director for WWKI in Kokomo, Indiana. He was among the monster hunters. He and 3 of his colleagues claimed to have seen the creature stooped in the shadows of an abandoned house. He described it as being more like 5 feet tall, but it had its back to him, so he had no other description beyond that. He also claimed to have a recording of the creature screaming, but that recording never made it to air. There were no more sightings after that. For a few nights, residents reported hearing the creature screaming in the night, but just as quickly as it had entered their lives, it was gone. There were a lot of plausible explanations for what the creature could have been, most of them just as implausible as the descriptions of the creature itself. Some suggested a kangaroo, using the logic that someone who had never seen one before may mistake its long tail as a third leg. An Ohio man even called the radio station inquiring if any kangaroos had been found because his beloved pet Macy had been stolen the year before. Others suggested an escaped ape from a traveling circus. None of those explanations bore weight, though, so the good old standby was thrown in: mass hysteria. That one actually does have some merit. Remember how I told you I'd get back to Greg Garrett's sighting? He was supposedly the first witness, except he wasn't. He lied. Later on, he admitted that he was just teasing McDaniels and the media, and if you think about it, that one was bogus from the start. Now, I know that Gen X kids were notoriously unsupervised, but the idea that he was allowed to play outside at night at 9 p.m. on a school night is a stretch. Plus, even if it was unseasonably warm, April is way too early for fireflies, or we call them lightning bugs here in Mississippi, and we don't even get them until mid-June. The final nail in the coffin for this one is his shoes. How could it have run across his feet, shredded his shoes, but didn't damage his foot in any way? That one doesn't make sense. But that only explains away one witness. McDaniels and Rainbow both claimed to have seen it, and their sightings were the true catalyst for the media frenzy. There was still no solid evidence to refute their claims. So what do you think? Was it a kangaroo, or did Enfield, Illinois have its very own cryptid? From there, we move on to South Carolina in the late 80s. Prior to 1988, the most interesting thing about the Scape or swamp was the origin of its name. During the Revolutionary War, a group of American militiamen ambushed a group of British soldiers who were entertaining some ladies. The ladies ran off into the swamp, and after that, it was locally known as Enfield Horror Swamp. It was eventually sanitized to Scape Ore. Raise your hand if you thought that had something to do with minerals. In late June of 1988, Chris Davis was driving home late at night on Browntown Road alongside the Scape Ore Swamp when his car blew a tire. He pulled over onto the shoulder of the road and got out to repair the tire, and as he was finishing up, he said that he heard someone running toward him. He spun around to look into the dense, dark swamp, straining his eyes to see what it could be, and saw a large, dark figure barreling towards him. He described it as being 7 feet tall with scaly green skin and glowing red eyes. As he got back into his vehicle, the creature jumped onto the roof of the car and he put it into drive and started driving, swerving wildly, trying to shake it off of the car. He did not want to report the incident for fear of ridicule, but his mother insisted and she took him to Sheriff Liston Truesdale. The sheriff was skeptical of the story, but he took the report seriously. He sent men out to investigate the area and even submitted Chris to a polygraph, which he passed. The officers found that the vehicle that Chris was driving had sustained substantial damage, including the side mirror nearly being ripped off and several dents and scratches along the vehicle. They also found 3 toed-clawed footprints that they took casts of. This event cemented the Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp, or the Bishopville Lizard Man as it's also known, in cryptid history. After the initial report, other reports started pouring in of sightings, damage to other vehicles, and one farmer even reported that the Lizard Man had attacked one of his cows. The sheriff's department took every report seriously. After the initial report, the Lizard Man became Lee County's most famous resident. You can visit and buy a t-shirt, coffee mug, a bumper sticker, or any number of souvenirs with a Lizard Man's picture on it. You can stop in at Harry and Harry 2 and get a Lizard Man burger, which is a burger topped with bacon and pimento cheese, which sounds delicious. You can even attend the annual Lizard Man Stomp, which is a festival held in the Big Green Guy's honor. The sightings have slowed over the years, but they do happen from time to time. There are even blurry photos that claim to have captured the Lizard Man. I tend to agree with Stephen Colbert on this one, though. All the pictures really do is prove that South Carolina has trees. The Lizard Man is not an entirely modern phenomenon. There is a Muskogee legend of a large lizard. The legend goes that a party of hunters were trying to smoke out a female bear from a cave, but what came out was not a bear, it was a large lizard. It abducted several members of the party. Most of the tellings of the legend end with the final members of the party escaping when the lizard was attacked by a panther. Skeptics write the whole thing off as either a case of mass hysteria or a tourist draw and claim that Chris Davis's initial sighting was just an excuse to avoid getting in trouble for damaging his car. They also claim that all of the sightings afterwards were similar in nature or misidentified animals, including alligators. I say both sides have a point, but remember, Chris Davis passed a polygraph. They're not infallible, but it does lend credence to his story, and also alligators are not 7 feet tall or bipedal. But most of the photos that I've seen are so blurry that they could be of anything. So I say keep an open mind, and if you ever find yourself driving alongside the Scape Ore Swamp, pray that your car does not break down. That's all I have for you for this one. Come back next time and I will ask you one question. You want to hear something spooky? Also, remember, like, subscribe, and do all those things.